In the silence of the wilderness, a shadow loomed over the encampment of the Israelites. A godless fear crept into their hearts as they stood beneath the ominous peaks of Mount Sinai, where the divine presence shrouded the mountain in fire and smoke. In this void of uncertainty, something dark and insidious took root, a whisper of rebellion that echoed through the assembly. What happens when a liberated people, still tasting the freedom from their oppressors, turn their backs on the very force that set them free? This is the chilling tale of the golden calf, a story of idolatry and wrath, where divine judgment descends like a storm, and the limits of forgiveness are tested in the crucible of faithlessness. The Israelites, having escaped the clutches of Pharaoh and witnessed the miracles of the Red Sea, found themselves encamped at the foot of Mount Sinai. They were a people on the precipice of transformation, poised to enter into a covenant that would define their destiny as a chosen nation. Yet, despite the wonders they had seen, an undercurrent of doubt and restlessness coursed through the camp. Moses, their leader and the mediator between them and the divine, had ascended the mountain to commune with God. Days turned into weeks, and the towering figure of their prophet remained absent, enveloped in the thick darkness that covered Sinai like a shroud. It fell to the Israelites to bear the burden of the unknown. With the heavenly presence rumbling through the mountain, it became a mute monument to the forces operating beyond our perception. A growing worry set in, a concern that Moses might never return, that the God who had saved them was now far away and unreachable. This was more than just a case of impatience. It was a deep-seated dread of abandonment, of being left without guidance in a cruel and merciless wilderness. In this crucible of uncertainty, the Israelites' faith began to waver. The desert, with its unforgiving sun and barren expanse, mirrored their inner desolation. The divine presence on the mountaintop, once a source of awe, now felt like an oppressive reminder of their fragility. And so, as the shadows of doubt lengthened, the people turned to Aaron, Moses' brother and the high priest, with a desperate demand. "Make us gods who shall go before us, for as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." The desire was a serious betrayal, a turning away from the God who had just freed them from the house of bondage, in addition to a call for leadership. Between the demands of the people and Moses' absence, Aaron gave in to pressure. He gave them instructions to bring their golden earrings, which were part of the loot stolen from Egypt. Using this gold, he fashioned a calf, which was well known in the ancient Near East as a sign of strength and fertility. The Israelites' excitement transformed from expectation to frenzy as the molten gold began to take shape. In their moment of terror, this material god, a god they could feel and touch, provided a fictitious sense of solace. The golden calf, gleaming in the firelight, was lifted up before the assembly, and Aaron declared, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." With those words, the boundary between reverence and blasphemy was obliterated. The people celebrated with feasting and revelry, indulging in rites that had more in common with the pagan practices of Egypt than with the worship of the true God. The sounds of their revelry echoed through the camp, a dissonant chorus of misplaced devotion and reckless abandon. On the summit of the mountain above them, the holy presence erupted in fury. Moses heard God's voice booming through the smoke, revealing to him the extent of the people's depravity. God spoke with evident fury, saying, "They have hastily turned off from the way I commanded them." He vowed to eliminate them all, to remove them from the face of the planet, and to start again with Moses. The coming divine wrath was threatening to fall like a sword, severing the covenant people at the height of their foolishness. As Moses descended from the mountain, carrying the tablets of stone inscribed by the very finger of God, the sounds of celebration grew louder. What Moses found as he approached the camp was a scene of utter defilement, a people lost in debauchery, dancing around the idol they had fashioned. The sight of the calf and the people's idolatrous revelry filled Moses with a righteous fury. In a moment of unrestrained wrath, He hurled the stone tablets to the ground, shattering them at the foot of the mountain, symbolizing the broken covenant between God and Israel. Moses confronted Aaron, his brother and trusted deputy, demanding an explanation for this grave transgression. Aaron's response was a feeble deflection, blaming the people's demands and the mystical appearance of the calf as if it had miraculously emerged from the fire on its own. But the damage was done. The people had forsaken their God, not out of ignorance but from a willful abandonment of their faith. The idol they worshipped was not just a golden calf, it was a manifestation of their own desires, fears, and faithlessness. With an intention to eradicate any corruption, Moses gave the command to burn, grind, and disperse the calf across the river. He made the Israelites drink the bitter mixture against their will, a sobering reminder of the poison and futility of idolatry. This deed, gold converted to dust, an idol reduced to bitter ashes, was more than just a punishment. It was a striking illustration of the hollowness of their false religion. But a more profound reckoning was still to come, even in the midst of this judgment. Moses went back up the mountain to beg God, whose wrath was still blazing, to spare the people's lives. Moses said, "If you will forgive their wrongdoing, then kindly blot me out of your book that you have written." It was an entreaty, both fervent and unselfish, offering to give up his place in God's eyes in order to save the people. God's response was measured, a divine balancing of justice and mercy. He would not destroy the people outright, but neither would he overlook their transgression. "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book," God declared, setting forth the principle of individual accountability. A plague struck the camp, a lingering punishment that served as a reminder of their collective sin and the enduring consequences of their actions. The people were spared annihilation, but the scars of their disobedience remained. The tablets, shattered in Moses' fury, were replaced by a new set, again inscribed with the 10 Commandments. But the renewal of the covenant came with conditions, a renewed emphasis on obedience and the recognition of God's absolute sovereignty. The people were reminded that forgiveness, while graciously offered, was not a license to sin without consequence. The mercy extended to them was not an absolution, but a reprieve, a chance to rebuild what had been broken, but always with the knowledge that the divine judgment was both just and inescapable. The episode of the golden calf revealed the fragility of the covenant and the fickleness of the human heart. It exposed the limits of forgiveness, not as a flaw in the divine character, but as a reflection of the human propensity to betray even the most sacred promises. The people's lapse into idolatry was not just a momentary failure, but a deep-seated reluctance to fully trust in the God who had saved them. The forgiveness they received was real, but it was tempered by the reality that some consequences could not be undone. The divine patience had its limits, and the Israelites would learn that the path of faith was fraught with trials that tested their allegiance at every turn. The golden calf tale is more than just a chronicle of prehistoric worship. It is a mirror reflecting the ongoing conflict in human nature between obedience and disobedience, faith and fear. It serves as a warning about the dangers of impatience and the allure of concrete but untrue pledges in times of uncertainty. Right on the verge of a divine promise, the Israelites stumbled into a betrayal that almost lost them everything. Their act of making the calf was a fundamental rejection of the invisible God who had provided them with signs and wonders, not just a careless error.